discuss a travel truth. Now, I came across a few updates in the mainstream, literally and figuratively. I mainly use social media to share fresh, new blogging tips. So I use social media mainly to share content about blogging because that's what I do, but I also share travel thoughts. And I do spend only a tiny bit of time in my mainstream, mainly because I discovered that my purpose is to create new content for you guys, to help bloggers. That's it. So the engagement stuff is, it's not what you most need from me. It's not most really helpful. I really don't enjoy it. So if it's not most helpful for you and for me, and I don't enjoy it, then it doesn't make any sense, right? At least that's how I think, logically. But when I see the mainstream when it comes to traveling, there's a popular tendency to, and these updates, before I say popular, they generate a lot of popularity engagement. So retweets, likes, chats, angry people, happy people, complainers, people trying to defend these places, and it's just what the mainstream does. It's not. The mainstream symbolically and literally the mainstream in social media. So I'm talking about when you visit your mainstream. This is what's going on. It doesn't think. So it doesn't see the truth. It sees an illusion. And one of these travel truths is it ain't the place, it's you. I'm pointing at you. See that finger, travelers? Travelers love trashing places, complaining about places. I just came across a video on YouTube and I see it on Twitter where travelers will say, what place came up short? What place was a disappointment? What place was not what you expected, but from a negative vantage point? The truth is, it's not the place, it's your mind, your grievance, your complaint. It never has to do with a geographic place on the map. Your experience. You're free to air grievances. You're free to complain. You're free to trash a country and say it's the dirtiest, filthiest place you've ever been to. And you're free to get a bunch of people to agree and say, yeah, these places are horrible. Run with it. But it's not true, because if it was the place, it would be absolute for everyone. It would be. And then you'll see other people say, I loved it. Or, well, it was intense, but it doesn't make a place bad. And I'll discuss perhaps the ultimate lightning rod for world travelers, green travelers, digital nomads like myself. I've been circling the globe for 13 years. And it's a country called India. You may have heard of it. Travelers speak about it from time to time, and they have polarizing opinions. Some love it, a lot of people hate it. A lot of people say it's the filthiest, dirtiest country they've ever been to. A lot of people like myself say that it's a beautiful country with a rich culture and very heart-centered, kind human beings. That can get intense. It can get intense. It's a wonderful mirror for white people, because you get to see in your mind your guilt, your shame, your embarrassment. You get to see how you thought you lived in an orderly society, but your mind's in a state of chaos, because India reflects that to you. That's you. That's your mind. Uh-oh. Personal responsibility. Responsibility for your mind and not a place on a map. Can that be true? That's not very popular. Isn't it so much more popular? Like, why do you think these posts gain great engagement, or at least a fair level of engagement the main in the streams that are main on Twitter and on Facebook? I see it on Twitter a lot. And then these posts that please the YouTube algorithm. They're popular because they perpetuate a victim mentality. It's this country's fault. This country's horrible. And that's very popular. It's very unpopular in the world to say, hey, India appeared to be horrible to you and disgusting and filthy because all of these horrible fear, guilt, all these really truly unpleasant, horrific emotions in your unconscious mind. When you got there, you chose to project it onto a geographic location. And that's not very popular because you see the world's based on the opposite. I hate this country. I hated it too. It's dirty. It's filthy. Blah, blah, blah. It's 5-year-olds airing grievances, except they appear to be in adult bodies, which is fine. You can air your grievances. You can complain. Go for it. But it doesn't make it true. Your belief doesn't make it true. It's not the country. It's you. Your fault. It's not your fault, but it's your perspective. And I'll prove it to you. If it were true and it were the country and not you, then everybody would see it that way, wouldn't they? So when I went to India, I almost died there. But I was an asshole who made a stupid decision. So for me to blame India as being filthy or dirty because I made his assholiness ate Caesar salad that was a little tepid, not quite chilled, and even ordering that in the first place in India, where truthfully the hygiene is still like, you go into some bathrooms, you won't see any soap or water. That happened a few times. You had water, but there was no soap, and it doesn't make the country bad. It just means a lot of people there, relative to the whole of the country, is not aware that it can be helpful to wash your hands with soap. Does that make it bad if people are not aware when they know not what they do? No, they're just not aware. Another key point to make about a place like India, which is a lightning rod, you have to be unintelligent at best and a dingbat at worst to think that you're traveling to a remote place with no humans, and most people aren't going to, or the most posh neighborhoods in London or Luxembourg or let's say Monte Carlo. Guys, please. Everybody knows what the place that they're visiting when they're going to India. Like they're getting, like it's gonna be intense. So when you show up, you're thinking, oh, I just thought it was gonna be a paradise. Obviously, you're completely uninformed, and that's you deciding to be uninformed. I like pointing because it's like when you see when you understand, oh, it really is me, then you could remove yourself from all of these grievance threads and complaint threads and just enjoy a place. And you can start doing some mind training and seeing what it reflects back to you. So yeah, India can be very intense. Doesn't make it bad. It'll make you compassionate if you open up your mind. It will make you empathetic. Not as far as you framing anyone through a victim mentality, but just understanding that we all have our experience. And instead of hardening your mind and your heart with your own guilt and fear and grief and rage and all this stuff kicking around in your unconscious mind, you could let that stuff come up, face your fears, do that, and then let it open your heart. That's what wise travelers do, wise human beings, right? You could harden yourself to trauma, your life becomes worse, push it down, acts out in some other way, or feel it open up and then see what a beautiful place it is. And I remember, a number of travelers, but one that expat from the States where she lived in Thailand for a long time. And India is far and away her favorite place in the world. far and away. And I've met more than a few travelers like that. And it's because they see the love and they don't tune into the chaos or the intensity, or they spot what appears to be chaos and intensity, but they see the order in it in a lot of places. Every country is a mirror which reflects your state of mind back to you, because the world's a projection. All right. This is why to this date you've never seen me in a few travel posts I've published on bloggingparadise.com, most of them blogging tips, trash a place. I'll share benefits, drawbacks, upsides, downsides. We've been to places where, for whatever reason, in my mind has been reflected back to me, a number of the locals maybe weren't as friendly, or we had some rough experiences. Even on a level of form, there are unfriendly human beings and rough experiences in every country on the planet. And the trick is that the ego plays, because reading some of the comments on some of these videos, people, especially US citizens, oh, I kissed the customs agent when I came back home, and or almost I wanted to kiss the customs agent, or the my passport, and all this stuff, like believing that since America is a highly developed first world country in some ways, as far as hygiene and order, that we don't have during COVID, whatever the percentage was of people that were blowing their brains out, killing themselves, that we're not all controlled by fear and punishment. Not all of us, wink, wink, but that we're not, like in the US, our mind is not so rotted, decayed, like a rotted, decayed mind, where most humans in the United States, the ones that think a place like India is so horrible, mind is so upside down and festering, asleep, rotting, that most people in the United States believe that they have peace and freedom because our military can murder anybody or intimidate them or threaten them to kill them. So think of how many people, how insane, literally insane, the collective mindset in the US is. And then so many of these people, because they haven't faced that, they project it onto India, and they're like, America is just such a beautiful. And of course, at a level of form, there's cleanliness, hygiene, opportunity to make money, like totally 100%. But we just have different horrible problems, quote unquote, different, really, I don't, just different, not horrible problems. We have different projections of insanity in the US that are buried under gobs in the unconscious, gobs of unconscious guilt. And that's why we eat ourselves to death. And then we turn to a healthcare system that's just for trillionaires. Go to a hospital for 3-4 days, 45, 50, $60,000. So like that place may appear to be on a level of form orderly and everybody's praising it, but then so many Americans eat themselves to death, like ancient Rome. They do. It's a true story. And then the drug commercial, and you start thinking, oh, it's a different type of problems, but it's just as intense as India, except they have it out there in the world, in your face. It's a travel truth. You'll see it. And in the US, it's buried under ingenious propaganda. So this comes from a guy who circled the globe for 13 years. And I spent the first 30 something in the US, and I bought into it. And that's the thing, at a level of form, both places. I mean, have their problems? Don't. The US appears to be beautiful. On a level of form, in some regards, order, government, efficiency. And then when you start digging, you're like, oh, okay. So that's why I would never say a place is horrible or a nightmare or to stay away. And it's a travel truth. It's not the country, it's you. Like even me seeing issues with the US, of course, it's my mind. And if I see issues with India, it's my mind. But I'm making the point, even when I say at a level of form, guys, I mean just based on the surface based on appearances. Oh, the US is so orderly and government and yeah. And then we bury our problems so much deeper. So we have that, but then we actually allow drug companies to run these commercials. Whereas so many other countries, you'd be like, are you kidding me? So that's where if you're in the US, you'll say it's normal, it's kind of funny. Then when you leave and you're away from it, you're like, there's a lot of insanity in the US. Truly, it's insane. It's people, puzzle factory type stuff. But then they make the laws. And people follow because they're not too sane, right? And then they look to these ones as heroes. So you're like, oh, it's a different type of kind of screwiness in the US. Correct. You win a biscuit. Or here in Costa Rica, you win a chicky. Or perhaps you would win a pinguino. Or perhaps you would win a sponge here in beautiful Grecia, Costa Rica. Dulces para los gringos, como mí. So guys, that's it for today. I think we're talking about 15 minutes and I've moved away from the lives for a bit. So it's a travel truth. It's not the country, it's you. Really get into your mind. Try your best not to jump in on those complaint threads and grievance threads. This place, totally overrated, totally underwhelming. Try not to do that because it's your mindset that's projecting that. And you'll see the more you complain, and you'll get your complainers come to you and they'll say, oh, it was so horrible. And then one country's the best in the world. And it's you could have your favorite country, but when you start thinking that a place, attachment adds a level of insanity, delusion, blindness. So when you say a country's so beautiful, it's the best, greatest country in the world. I've heard that a few times growing up in the US, believe it or not. And then when you only see the beauty of it and it's the best and all these things that you love, you blind yourself from its on a worldly level, on world of duality. It's like beauty and then horrors and then truly horrific, terrible, horrible things that the country regularly does. So then when you step out of that and you're like, okay, let's look at it honestly, you'll see its duality. Some beautiful points about all these countries, even your favorite countries, even the best countries. And then when you look and you're like, oh, wait a second, this best country comes up so short once I dig. So like the US, it is such a phenomenal country in so many regards. But when I rode, used public transport in Incheon, South Korea, Songdo, Incheon, I guess Incheon, which is a little west of Seoul. It made New York the money capital of the U.S. and the financial capitals world, if not the, and just, oh my God, New York City. It made the New York City MTA, mass transit, public transit, look like the Stone Age. Really. I was blown away, and it was cheap. So when you think such a phenomenal country and you compare New York City mass transit, and most of you would never know because you've never been to South Korea. So this is me sharing my traveler take, my 13 years of circling the globe. Major city and public transit eons behind Seoul. So that's just one out of many, many different, let's say one of the levels where you'd look at a country and say, okay, it might be the greatest country in the world in your mind and you think it's the best country. But when you really look at it, it's phenomenal in a lot of ways. And then it comes up woefully short, especially when you either travel or you listen to someone who does travel, like me, who'll say, yeah, there's so many phenomenal countries. Oh, they all are in their own regard. And it's duality. So they'll be phenomenal in some regards, awesome in some regards, just brilliant in other ways. It's duality. So maybe not so hot. And of course, we all have our personal preferences. So that's cool too. But trash in a place, guys, it's you. It's never the country. So when you start doing that, you're going to become very unpopular because in a world of complainers and people airing grievances, that doesn't people nodding their heads is what gets everything going in the world. And then somebody comes along and says, oh, take responsibility for your mind. Well, why would you do that? The world is based on the insane outside in, not the inside out. But you'll have peace of mind. And also, you'll be able to responsibly share as your emotional intelligence increases genuine experiences from places all around the world, which will help other people make your followers, your readers, fellow travelers, aspiring travelers, responsible, informed decisions based on positives, negatives, without the vitriol, without the charge, the fear, the complaints, the grievances. Even if you really didn't like something about it, you'll say, okay, that's my take on things. These are some of the drawbacks, something you may not expect. But you won't write these hatchet pieces because not only are they lame on a level of form, they're not true because it's your complaints and your grievances. And again, if it wasn't, it'd be absolute, wouldn't it? Truth is absolute. I mean, if you're talking about real truth, this world's not what it seems that it is, but at least you'll start seeing the idea of truth being very different than your belief system. And then that's where things will start moving along and you'll have more peace of mind more than anything. So for today, guys.